Hey everybody, this is Lomi, and last week I made Rhyllyn's jacket, meaning this project was finally finished. This week I'm going to be showing you the end result, but that means we're going to back up a little bit and look at everything that this customization project actually entailed. It wasn't until I backed up and started gathering video files that I realized this project has actually been going for more than 2 years. It started with finding my grail doll, my LatiDoll Rei Cristopher, bringing him home and unboxing him. I knew a long time ago that this was the doll I wanted to be Rhyllyn, but he wasn't quite right. I had always wanted the slimmer model body, and the doll I was able to find had the really muscular body instead. Right away he was going to need some modifications and possibly a new body, but the first step ended up being just getting his fantasy parts. I ordered them from ResinSoul, and at some point along the way I realized I had never shared the unboxing of these parts. I sculpted a pair of custom thigh caps to go on top of the ResinSoul legs that would allow them to fit on the LatiDoll body, even though I wasn't sure I was going to be keeping that one. I learned a bit about doll dyeing along the way. My first dye attempts turned out really badly. And of course, all these videos are up on my channel, so if you want to backtrack and see them, I've put together a playlist of Rhyllyn's customization that you can view. One advantage of having a dye project that went wrong was I also learned a lot about removing dye too, so dyeing things in the future isn't quite so intimidating now. The second time that I dyed the parts it worked a lot better, but I also used a different dye for that. The end result was a really beautiful green that was just perfect for this character. I would later use what I learned to dye Rune's parts too, but we'll get to his project when it's time for his project. Right now it's all about Rhyllyn. I removed his old official LatiDoll face-up because it was chipped up, and I did a new custom face-up for the doll. The face-up I did was a little bit more gentle, which is good because this character is supposed to be just a little boy, at least when the series begins. When he and Rune first cross paths, he's only about 8 years old. And that actually happens in book 4 of the series, which is about to release at the end of November. I made him a custom wig using alpaca fiber that I had dyed, and it was a really interesting experience because it was my first time making a doll wig that didn't have a parting line. I also had a little mishap where I tried to buy him a new body and it wasn't at all the right size. The character would have been way too small for what I needed, so I ended up replacing that one with the MyouDoll body that he's on now. That ended up being perfect to work with the legs that I already had, so it needed very little work to get the fantasy parts to fit. Plus, the Myu body was a lot softer and had great range of motion, which I really appreciate in all of my dolls, but particularly in really young characters, because I feel like most little kids are kind of contortionists. They're always sitting and leaning on things in a really strange way, so having him be really mobile was important to me. It also helped that it was a perfect resin match for his LatiDoll head, so I didn't have to redo the face-up. His hands and arms were a long project though, and I actually ended up having to redo them if you'll remember, because the first time I made the hands, they were made for the LatiDoll body, which was a lot bigger. So when I got the Myu body, I had to completely restart to make hands that were proportional to the new body. This was probably the longest part of the project. There was some sewing in the middle too. I made him a hat, I made him some neat pants, and unfortunately I don't seem to have the pants making video on my laptop anymore, so I'm not really sure where it went. It's on an external somewhere, but I couldn't tell you which one. And of course I shared recently the misadventures of casting his hands and custom sculpted arms. I learned a lot from that process, and I'm really excited for how it worked out in the end, because I gained a lot of knowledge that I can use later on for more custom casting in the future. I cut some corners using spray paint on his parts, and of course I learned that my stencil for scales works beautifully, and I'm still gonna get that up on my website, so if anybody wants it, you'll have it soon. And then we were back to his coat. After his coat was done, I did make him a simple t-shirt, but mostly I was really excited to just finally get the doll together. And here he is! And yes, he stands up a lot better than I ever expected he would. Rhyllyn is such a sweet and innocent character, and I love how that came through in the doll. He's got this very soft and gentle look about him, and when he stands up, his feet have the most adorable natural pigeon toe, so his cute little lizard feet rotate to the inside whenever he stands. That was never planned, and I don't know why it happens, but I love the fact that it does. There were some other little projects along the way, things like making his eyes that I didn't share today, but they are in the playlist if you want to see them. At the end of everything, this was a really enjoyable experience, and I wish that it hadn't taken me so long to do it. I feel like I could keep talking about this little guy forever, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna stop there, and thank you all so much for joining me on this customization journey. Next, I'm going to be tackling finally finishing Rune, and I'm really excited to see how the skills that I learned from making his little brother here will translate to finishing the big guy in a way that I'm really, truly, finally happy with. Hopefully, you'll join me on that journey too. That's all for today though. Thanks for watching. Bye.